Good morning, Alex. How are you?
Good morning, Tiara. Doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm great.
Good.
So this morning we're going to go through a few questions with the Commissioner. The first question being, what is privacy?
So privacy has many different definitions, and you see them in different legal sources, things like the right to be left alone or the ability to control the space around you. But what we mean when we talk about privacy in our office is the ability to control information about an individual, that an individual should have some control over what happens to that information. So that's what we mean when we talk about privacy.
Okay. Alrighty, so the next question is, what does PrivCon investigate?
There are three main cases when we might trigger an investigation. So the first is when an individual tries to exercise their rights, so they have rights to access or correct information with an organization. If the individual feels that that right was not carried out appropriately, then they can make a complaint to us and ask us to review. There could be an instance where an organization has a data breach and they are required to notify our office if the breach of security is likely to cause harm to an individual or an adverse effect to an individual. So that could result in us doing further investigation. And also we can just receive general complaints about non-compliance. If someone feels an organization is not in compliance, we could choose to investigate in that way. So those are the ways that we might decide to trigger an investigation.
Okay. And the third question, how would PIPA affect my business?
It depends, of course, on where your business is and what your business does and how much personal information you use in your business. But what PIPA means is that organizations have to implement a program in order to protect personal information and ensure it is used in a lawful way. And that means a lot of different things depending on the context. So what's the risk of harm to an individual? That can determine if you need to implement security controls to protect the information. I like to say that in very simple terms, it's about having the ability to communicate to the individual what's happening to their data. The individual can reply and say, okay, yes, I'm good with that. And then the organization has to make sure they actually follow what they said they were going to do and keep their promises. It's in a very simplified terms.
Okay. And the last question is, what happens to my information collected before January 2025?
Yes, so people have been using personal information for years, decades even, and so it's to be expected that people already have personal information even though PIPA is not in effect yet. So what we encourage people to do is get on the road to PIPA and look at the various steps that they can take, and we've broken it down into bite-sized chunks for how you can develop a privacy program. And that includes doing things like identifying the purposes for why you collect personal information and also being able to explain to the individuals what you're doing with it. But prior to January 1st, 2025, if an organization already has the personal information, it's not necessary that they go back to the individual and say, we need to get your permission again, necessarily. They can simply say that it's presumed to have been collected according to the individual's consent.
Okay. And that's it for my questions. Thank you, Alex, for your time.
Pleasure as always.